The big meeting room was filled with strange sounds. Clicking noises came from one corner where the bug-like aliens sat. Soft humming came from another corner where the floating jellyfish creatures were. In the middle of it all, Jake Morrison sat very still in his chair. He was the human representative, and he had been coming to these meetings for 3 years now. Jake was 55 years old, with gray hair and tired eyes. He had served in the military for 20 years before becoming a diplomat. Now he sat in this huge room filled with aliens who thought humans were stupid. Today was going to be different, but nobody knew it yet. The room was as big as a football field. The ceiling was so high you could barely see it. Strange lights hung down like stars, giving everything a blue glow. There were seats for over 200 different species, but only about 50 were here today. Each species had their own section, with special air and gravity to keep them comfortable. Lisa Carter sat next to Jake. She was 38 years old and one of the smartest people on Earth. She had 3 degrees in science and could solve problems that made computers crash. But here, the aliens treated her like a child playing with toys. Behind them sat the rest of the human team. There was Dr. Sam Johnson, an old man with white hair who knew everything about space. There was Maria Lopez, a young woman who could speak 12 alien languages. There was Captain Pete Williams, a military man who always stood up straight. And there was Dr. Nancy Brown, who studied alien cultures and tried to help humans understand them. The meeting had been going on for 2 hours already. The aliens were talking about mining in space. They wanted to dig up valuable metals from asteroids in the Kepler belt. This was a big project that would make a lot of money and provide materials for the whole galaxy. The Zephyrians were leading the discussion. They looked like big insects, made of crystal. Their leader, Zertesh, had been talking for 30 minutes about how smart they were and how their machines could do anything. His voice sounded like breaking glass when he spoke. Our quantum extraction systems are the most advanced in the galaxy, Zertesh said, his crystal body flashing different colors. We can extract pure metals with 97% efficiency. No other species comes close to our technology. The other aliens nodded and made their agreement sounds. The Vorthic delegate, who looked like a giant octopus, waved his tentacles in approval. The crystalline consortium representative glowed bright orange, which meant they were happy. Lisa Carter had been trying to speak for an hour, but they kept ignoring her. Finally, she stood up and cleared her throat loudly. "If I may suggest something," she said in her clear, strong voice. The room got quiet, not because they respected her, but because they thought it was funny when humans tried to talk about science. "Our studies show that the Kepler belt has unusual gravity patterns," Lisa continued. "The asteroids move in ways that your quantum extractors might not handle well. We have developed a different method that could work better." The room erupted in what sounded like laughter. The Zephyrians made high-pitched ringing sounds. The Vorthic's tentacles shook with amusement. Even the serious-looking Alterans, who resembled tall blue humans, were making their version of chuckling sounds. "Please enlighten us," Zartesh said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "What could humans possibly know about advanced mining that we do not?" Lisa pulled out a small device and projected a hologram into the center of the room. It showed the Kepler belt with all its moving asteroids and swirling gravity fields. "We call it adaptive extraction," she said. "Instead of using fixed quantum fields, we use flexible drilling systems that can adjust to changing conditions. Our computers learn from each asteroid and get better with practice." The hologram showed human mining ships that looked simple compared to the alien designs. They were smaller, less shiny, and had fewer fancy parts. But in the simulation, they moved smoothly through the asteroid field, adjusting to each rock they encountered. "It looks primitive," said the Alteran representative, Captain Zeth Carr. He was tall and blue with 4 arms and eyes that glowed slightly. Your ships are so simple. Where are the quantum processors? Where are the gravity manipulators? We don't need them, Lisa replied. Our system works with the natural forces, instead of fighting against them. It's more flexible and uses less energy. The laughter got louder. Even species that usually didn't agree with each other were united in thinking the human idea was ridiculous. Flexibility, repeated Zartesh, making the word sound dirty. That is what primitive species say when they cannot build proper technology. Council. Chairman Veltar raised his 4 arms for quiet. He was from the oldest species in the galaxy, and he looked like a giant praying mantis with golden skin. His compound eyes could see in all directions at once, and his voice could be heard clearly across the enormous room. The human proposal has been noted, he said in his formal way. As with previous human suggestions, it will be filed for future consideration. Jake Morrison knew what that meant. Future consideration was council language for never going to happen. He had heard those words many times in the past 3 years. Lisa tried again. Our calculations show we could increase metal extraction by 340% using our method. The cost would be half of what the Zephyrian plan requires. Calculations, scoffed Dr. Yathara, the chief scientist from Zarian Prime. She looked like a tall, thin human, but with purple skin and silver hair. Human mathematics is centuries behind galactic standards. Your computers are barely more advanced than counting machines. The insults continued for another 20 minutes. Every human suggestion was dismissed before it could be properly explained. Every human innovation was called primitive or backwards. Every human representative was treated like a child who didn't understand how the adult world worked. Jake Morrison had been listening to this for 3 years. He had been patient. He had been polite. He had tried to learn their ways and fit into their system. But patience has limits, even for diplomats. He thought about Earth, his home planet far away. He thought about the billions of humans who had worked hard to join this galactic community. They had built ships and learned alien languages and sent their best people to represent them. And for what? To be laughed at in meetings and ignored when they tried to help. Jake stood up slowly. His movement was so calm and quiet that most of the aliens didn't notice at first. But his team did. Lisa Carter looked at him with surprise. Dr. Johnson raised an eyebrow. Captain Williams straightened up even more than usual. I would like to make a procedural motion, Jake said. His voice wasn't loud, but something in his tone made the room go quiet. In 3 years of meetings, the humans had never made a procedural motion. They had never used the formal rules of the council to do anything except ask questions or give information. Chairman Veltar looked interested for the first time all day. The chair recognizes Ambassador Morrison. What is your motion? I move to suspend human participation in Galactic Council proceedings, Jake said clearly. The silence was complete now. Even the background humming of the environmental systems seemed to stop. 200 alien faces turned to look at the small human delegation. Motion granted, Veltar said, curiosity flickering in his compound eyes. Please proceed. Jake Morrison looked around the room one last time. He saw the crystal insects who thought they were smarter than everyone else. He saw the purple-skinned scientists who dismissed human research without reading it. He saw the blue military officers who laughed at human tactics. He saw all the species who had spent 3 years treating humans like amusing pets. The human delegation formally withdraws from the Galactic Council, effective immediately. He said, "We thank the Council for the educational experience and wish you success in your future endeavors." He picked up his briefcase, turned toward the exit, and began walking. His team followed without a word. Lisa Carter gathered her holographic projector. Dr. Johnson closed his research files. Captain Williams marched in perfect step behind his ambassador. They all walked together toward the huge doors that led out of the chamber. The aliens sat in stunned silence as the humans left. Their footsteps echoed in the quiet room, a steady rhythm that seemed to count down to something none of them understood yet. The doors closed behind the human delegation with a soft sound. They were gone, and they had left as quietly as they had arrived 3 years ago, got in the silence that followed. Chairman Veltar realized that in all his centuries of leading council meetings, he had never seen anyone leave like that. There had been no shouting, no threats, no dramatic speeches. The humans had simply decided they were done and walked away. It would be months before the galaxy understood what they had lost when those quiet footsteps faded away. Captain Ben Rodriguez was drinking his morning coffee when the message came through. He was sitting in his command chair on the bridge of the UES Discovery, a human ship that patrolled the outer edges of council space. The ship was not big or fancy like the alien vessels, but it was reliable and strong. Ben had been its captain for 6 years. The communication officer, Lieutenant Amy Foster, looked up from her station with a confused expression. "Captain, we're getting a priority alpha message from Earth Command. It's coded with Protocol 7. Ben almost dropped his coffee cup. Protocol 7 was something they had trained for, but never expected to use. It meant immediate withdrawal from all galactic operations. No questions asked. No delays allowed. Are you sure?" Ben asked, setting down his cup carefully. "Yes, sir. The authentication codes are correct. The message is repeating every 30 seconds. Ben read the message on his personal screen. It was short and simple. Protocol 7 authorized all human personnel and assets to withdraw from Council space immediately. Complete evacuation within 72 hours. No exceptions. Earth Command." He looked around his bridge. His crew of 25 people had become like family over the years. They had explored new star systems together, helped rescue ships in trouble, and learned to work with alien species. Now they were being called home. "Set course for Earth," Ben ordered. "Maximum speed." "Sir?" asked his first officer, Commander Kate Sullivan. "What about our patrol schedule?" "We're supposed to meet the Alterran fleet tomorrow for joint exercises. Send them our regrets," Ben said quietly. "Tell them something came up." 3 sectors away, Dr. Helen Park was in the middle of the most important work of her life. She was on Zarian Prime, working in a laboratory with alien scientists to develop new medical treatments. For 8 months, she had been studying something called quantum biological interfaces. It was complicated science that could help cure diseases across the galaxy. The Zarian scientists had been polite to her, but she could tell they thought human medicine was primitive. They used words like interesting and quaint when they talked about her research. Dr. Uthara, the head scientist, often corrected her methods and suggested better ways to do things, but Helen's approach was working. Her simple, direct methods were getting results that the complex Zarian techniques could not achieve. She was 3 months away from a breakthrough that could save millions of lives. Her personal communicator beeped with an urgent message. She read it twice to make sure she understood. Protocol 7. Immediate withdrawal. Helen looked at her alien colleagues who were bent over their own experiments. They barely looked up when she started packing her equipment. "I have been called back to Earth," she told Dr. Uthara. "Family emergency." The purple-skinned scientist glanced up briefly. "How unfortunate. Will you be returning soon?" "Your primitive methods were becoming almost useful." Helen smiled sadly. "I don't think I'll be back. Good luck with your research." She packed her notes and personal items into a small case. The breakthrough she had been working toward would have to wait. Or maybe the Zerion scientists would figure it out on their own. She doubted it, but that was not her problem anymore. Commander. Alex Thompson was leading war games with the Alterran Defense Fleet when his orders came. 20 human ships were practicing combat maneuvers with 50 Alterran vessels. The aliens had included the humans mostly to be polite, not because they thought human tactics were any good. The Alterrans fought like their machines calculated everything perfectly. Their formations were precise, and their movements were predictable. Admiral Zethkar had told Alex that human fighting methods were chaotic and inefficient. But Alex's ships kept winning the practice battles. They moved in ways the Alterran computers could not predict. They used tricks and surprises that the rule books said were impossible. The alien officers were getting frustrated because they could not understand how such simple ships with basic weapons kept defeating their advanced fleet. "Your tactics make no sense," Captain Vorthek complained after the humans won another mock battle. "No logical species would fight like this." "Maybe that's why it works," Alex replied with a grin. But the grin disappeared when he read the Protocol 7 message. He gathered his captains for an emergency meeting on his flagship. "We're going home," he told them simply. "All of us." "Right. Now, what about the war games?" asked Captain Lucy Chun. "We're supposed to finish the exercises tomorrow." "Send Admiral Zithkar our thanks for the training opportunity," Alex said. "Tell him we enjoyed working with his fleet." Within hours, human ships throughout the galaxy began moving toward home. There were no dramatic announcements or angry speeches. The humans simply finished whatever they were doing and left. On Trading Station Omega-7, Merchant Jimmy Roberts was negotiating a deal between the Zephyrians and the Vorthok. The two species could barely communicate with each other, but they both needed what the other had to sell. Jimmy had spent weeks learning both languages and understanding both cultures, so he could help them make a deal. The negotiations were almost complete. Both sides were happy with the terms Jimmy had worked out. It was the kind of trade agreement that could make both species rich and strengthen peace in the galaxy. But when the Protocol 7 message reached him, Jimmy politely excused himself from the meeting. "I apologize, but I have been called away on urgent business," he told the alien traders. "I'm sure you can work out the final details without me." The Zephyrian clicked his confusion. "But we need your translation services. We cannot understand their electromagnetic language." "And we cannot comprehend their crystal speech," added the Vorthok, waving his tentacles nervously. "This deal will die without a mediator." Jimmy felt bad about leaving them, but his orders were clear. "I have confidence you'll figure it out. Thank you for the opportunity to work with both your species." He packed his belongings and headed for the nearest human transport dock. Similar scenes played out across the galaxy. Human teachers left their alien students in the middle of lessons. Human engineers stopped work on construction projects that were almost finished. Human doctors completed their current surgeries, but canceled all future appointments. The withdrawal was so organized and complete that it seemed planned, but it was not. Earth Command had activated Protocol 7 based on Ambassador Morrison's report from the Council meeting. Every human in space had trained for this possibility, but nobody thought it would actually happen. Captain Sarah Mitchell was commanding a human outpost near the Galactic Rim. Her station served as a stopping point for ships traveling to unexplored regions. It provided fuel, food, and repairs to vessels from dozens of different species. The station was small but busy, with alien ships coming and going every day. The Protocol 7 message arrived. Sarah began the shutdown procedures immediately. Her crew of 40 people worked quickly to secure equipment and prepare for evacuation. "Captain," said her communications officer, "we have 6 alien ships requesting permission to dock. They need fuel and supplies." Sarah looked at her screens. The ships were from different species, all far from home and low on resources. If she followed Protocol 7 exactly, she should refuse them and leave immediately. But Sarah had been in space long enough to know that stranded ships meant dead. "Crews. Grant docking permission," she ordered. "We'll service them quickly, and then leave." Her crew worked twice as fast as usual to help the alien ships. They provided fuel, food, and emergency repairs without charging the usual fees. By the time the last alien ship departed, the human evacuation fleet had arrived to pick them up. "Why did you help them?" asked Lieutenant Tom Baker as they boarded the evacuation ship. "Our orders were to withdraw immediately." "Because it was the right thing to do," Sarah replied. "Just because we're leaving doesn't mean we stop being human." Across the galaxy, the human withdrawal continued. Research stations went dark. Trading posts closed. Military patrols turned around and headed home. Communication arrays shut down and fell silent. The aliens barely noticed at first. Humans had always been the quiet ones in galactic society. They did their jobs without complaining and helped when asked, but they were not flashy or dramatic. Most species thought of them as useful, but unremarkable. It would take time for the galaxy to realize what it had lost. The humans left the same way they had lived among the aliens, quietly, efficiently, and without making a fuss. They completed their current responsibilities, helped anyone who needed immediate assistance, and then simply disappeared. Ships that had depended on human-operated fuel stations found themselves stranded. Research projects that relied on human insights ground to a halt. Trade agreements that needed human mediators collapsed. Military exercises that included human tactics suddenly became predictable and boring, but the aliens did not understand the connection yet. They thought these were separate problems that would be solved quickly. They did not realize that the quiet, unremarkable humans had been the glue holding many parts of galactic civilization together. The human fleet moved steadily toward Earth, carrying people who had spent years building relationships with alien species. They had learned alien languages, studied alien cultures, and worked to make the galaxy a better place for everyone. Now they were going home, and they were not planning to come back. 6 months had passed since the humans left, and Chief Engineer Kixtel was staring at numbers that made no sense. The Kepler Belt mining operation was supposed to be the biggest success in Zephyrian history. Their quantum extraction systems were the most advanced in the galaxy. Every computer simulation had shown perfect results, but the reality was very different. "The ore purity is down 60% from what we expected," Kixtel reported to the board of directors. His crystal body flickered with frustrated red colors. "The gravitational fields keep changing, and our extractors cannot adjust fast enough." Board Chairman Krelvax made an angry grinding sound. His massive crystal form towered over the meeting table, flashing angry orange and yellow patterns. "That is impossible. Our technology is flawless." The simulations were perfect. "The simulations were based on stable conditions," Kixtel explained carefully. "But the asteroid field is not stable. The gravity changes every few hours. Our quantum fields lose focus, and the extraction rates drop to almost nothing." The other board members began clicking and grinding with agitation. They had invested billions of credits in this project. The Galactic Council had chosen their proposal over everyone else's, including the ridiculous human suggestion. "What about the human proposal?" asked Director Yextal quietly. "What did they suggest for this problem?" The room went silent. Nobody wanted to admit they had not studied the human plan carefully. It had been dismissed immediately as primitive. "Nonsense. Something about adaptive drilling and flexible systems," Kixtel said reluctantly. "They claimed their method could adjust to changing conditions automatically." "Primitive garbage," Krelvax declared. "Human technology is centuries behind ours. We just need to fine-tune our quantum extractors. But 3 more months of fine-tuning changed nothing. The Kepler belt continued to defeat the advanced Zephyrian technology. Asteroids that should have yielded tons of pure metal gave them only worthless rock. The project that was supposed to make them rich was bleeding money instead. On Zarian Prime, Dr. Yuthara was having her own problems. The quantum biological interface that Helen Park had been working on remained stubbornly broken. For 8 months, the human scientist had been making steady progress on the project. In the 2 months since she left, the Zarian team had accomplished nothing. Perhaps we should review the humans' research notes more carefully, suggested Dr. Kithara, her silver hair shining under the laboratory lights. Dr. Yuthara's purple skin darkened with embarrassment. The human left very incomplete notes. Her methods were too primitive to document properly. But that was not entirely true. Helen Park had left detailed notes about her approach to the quantum biological interface. The problem was that her methods seemed too simple to work. She used basic mathematical formulas instead of complex quantum equations. She relied on biological intuition instead of pure logic. The Zarian scientists had spent their careers believing that more complicated always meant better. Helen's simple approach challenged everything they thought they knew about science. Maybe we should try her method, just to see what happens, Dr. Kithara suggested again. Absolutely not, Dr. Yuthara replied fervently. We are serious scientists, not primitive experimenters. But their serious science was not working. The quantum biological interface remained as broken as ever, while reports came in of a plague spreading through the outer colonies. The medical breakthrough they needed desperately stayed just out of reach. The problems were not limited to science and mining. Across the galaxy, trade relationships that had worked smoothly for years were falling apart. Ambassador Zertish was discovering this firsthand on Trading Station Omega-7. He had come to complete the deal that Jimmy Roberts had been negotiating between the Zephyrians and the Vorthic. It should have been simple. Both sides had already agreed to the basic terms. But without Jimmy to translate and mediate, the two species could barely communicate. We offer crystal matrices of quality 7.3, Zartesh announced in his glass-breaking voice. The Vorthic delegate, Morthic, waved his tentacles in confusion. His electromagnetic speech patterns meant nothing to the crystal-based Zephyrian. I believe he is asking about the purity standards, said the station's automatic translator. But I cannot be certain. The nuances of Vorthic electromagnetic communication are beyond my programming. Zertesh clicked with frustration. Where is the human mediator? He understood both our languages perfectly. The humans withdrew from all galactic operations 6 months ago, the station administrator informed him. We have been trying to find replacement mediators, but none are available. The deal that Jimmy Roberts had almost completed died that day. Both species needed what the other offered, but they could not bridge the gap between their different ways of communicating. The Zephyrians saw the world through light and crystal resonance. The Vorthak experienced reality through electromagnetic fields and tentacle touch. Without someone who understood both perspectives, they might as well have been speaking to empty space. Similar trade failures were happening throughout the galaxy. The humans had served as mediators for dozens of species combinations that could not work together directly. They had learned alien languages and customs, studied different ways of thinking, and found ways to make incompatible species understand each other. Now those bridges were gone, and trade partnerships that had lasted for decades were crumbling. Military exercises were having problems too. Admiral Zeth Carr of the Alterran Defense Fleet was reviewing reports from recent war games, and the results were disappointing. The enemy response patterns are completely predictable, complained Captain Vorthic. Every simulation ends the same way. We know exactly what they will do before they do it. Admiral Zethkar remembered the joint exercises with the human fleet. Commander Thompson's ships had been smaller and less advanced, but they had won battle after battle against superior Alterran forces. Their tactics had been chaotic and unpredictable in ways that drove the Alterran computers crazy. The humans brought an element of surprise to our exercises, the Admiral admitted reluctantly. Their methods challenged our assumptions and made us better warriors. Their methods made no sense, Captain Vorthik protested. No logical species would fight like that. Perhaps that was exactly why it worked, Admiral Zethkar replied thoughtfully. But the humans were gone, and with them went the unpredictable element that had made the war games interesting and educational. Now the Alterran fleet practiced against enemies that behaved exactly like Alterran computers expected them to behave. They were becoming experts at fighting themselves, but they were learning nothing about facing truly different opponents. On Research Station Beta 12, alien scientists were struggling with projects that had been progressing smoothly when humans were involved. Dr. Sam Johnson had been working with a team of crystalline researchers on new forms of energy storage. His approach had been different from theirs, but it had been producing interesting results. Now the crystalline team was stuck. They could follow their own established methods, but those had already been explored thoroughly. Dr. Johnson's notes suggested different approaches that seemed too simple to work, but their own complex methods were not producing breakthroughs either. The human scientist had unusual perspectives on energy flow, admitted Chief Researcher Valkan. His ideas were primitive, but they sometimes led to unexpected discoveries. We do not need primitive ideas, declared Senior Researcher Morgan. We have the most advanced scientific methods in the galaxy. But advanced methods were not solving the problems they faced. The energy storage project that had been moving forward with human input was now stalled completely. Across the galaxy, the pattern repeated itself over and over. Projects that had included human participation were struggling or failing. Trade relationships that had depended on human mediators were falling apart. Military exercises that had benefited from human unpredictability were becoming boring and useless. The aliens began to notice that problems were appearing everywhere the humans used to be involved. But most of them still refused to connect the dots. The idea that primitive humans could be essential to galactic civilization was too hard for them to accept. It is just a coincidence, they told themselves. These problems would have appeared anyway. The humans were not that important. But deep down, some of them were beginning to wonder. The quiet species that they had dismissed as unremarkable had left quietly, and now remarkable problems were appearing everywhere. Chairman Valtar called an emergency meeting of the Galactic Council to discuss the growing list of failures and breakdowns. But he did not invite any humans to the meeting. After all, they were not members of the Council anymore. 2 years had passed since the humans left the galaxy, and Fleet Admiral Zethkar was staring at a tactical report that made his blue skin turn pale. The Void Wraiths had attacked again, and this time they had destroyed an entire star system. Void Wraiths were beings made of pure energy who lived in the empty space between galaxies. For centuries, they had only made small raids, stealing energy from ships and stations before disappearing back into the void. But something had changed. Their attacks were now organized, brutal, and impossible to predict. How many ships did we lose at Kepler Station? Admiral Zethkar asked his aide. 47 vessels, sir, including 2 battleships and a carrier. Captain Vorthik's forearms trembled as he read the report. The Wraiths used tactics we have never seen before. They appeared from 6 different directions at once, hit our weak points, and vanished before we could respond. Admiral Zethkar closed his 4 eyes and tried to think. In all his years of military service, he had never faced an enemy like this. The Wraiths seemed to have no plan, no logic, no predictable pattern. They struck randomly and disappeared without warning. Randomness, he muttered. Complete chaos. Something clicked in his memory. During the joint exercises with the human fleet 2 years ago, Commander Thompson had used similar tactics. His ships had attacked from unexpected angles, used confusing maneuvers, and won battles through pure unpredictability. "Sir?" Captain Vorthik asked. "The humans," Admiral Zethkar said slowly. "During our war games, they fought like this. Random attacks, unpredictable movements, chaos instead of order." "You mean those primitive exercises?" "Sir, those were not real tactics. The humans were just being illogical." "What if they were not being illogical? What if they were being smart in a way we did not understand?" Admiral Zethkar pulled up the old recordings from the joint exercises. He watched human ships dart and weave through space, making moves that no computer would recommend. At the time, it had seemed like amateur hour. Now it looked like genius. "Get me everything we have on human military tactics," he ordered, "and find out if any of our officers remember what Commander Thompson taught us." But Thompson and his people were long gone, and they had taken their knowledge with them. On the other side of the galaxy, the economic crisis was getting worse every day. Trade routes that had operated smoothly for decades were breaking down. Completely. Without human mediators, species that spoke different languages could not work together. Director of Commerce Zeltos was reviewing the latest trade statistics, and they were terrifying. Galactic trade volume was down 60% from 2 years ago. 3 major shipping companies had gone bankrupt. Food shortages were appearing on 17 different worlds. What about the automatic translation systems? Zeltos asked his assistant, "Cannot they replace the human mediators?" "The computers can translate words," replied Assistant Director Yelena, "but they cannot translate meaning. When the Zephyrians say crystal pure, they mean something different than when the Vorthik say energy clean. The humans understood these differences. The computers do not." Zeltos remembered Jimmy Roberts, the human trader who had worked on dozens of important deals. Jimmy had learned not just alien languages, but alien ways of thinking. He understood that different species valued different things and wanted different outcomes from the same deal. The humans were cultural translators, Zeltos realized. They did not just change words from one language to another. They changed ideas from one way of thinking to another. "We cannot replace them with machines," Yulineth agreed sadly. "Cultural understanding requires intuition and empathy. Computers have neither." The food shortages were getting critical on several worlds. The Alterans needed protein from Vorthek sea farms, but they could not communicate complex nutritional requirements to the tentacled species. The Crystalline Consortium needed specific minerals for their young, but their electromagnetic communications were meaningless to the rock-based species who mined those minerals. Jimmy Roberts had understood both sides of every deal. He had known that Alterans valued precision and efficiency, while Vorthik cared more about harmony and flow. He had translated not just words, but values and priorities. Now those bridges were gone, and species that had traded peacefully for generations were becoming suspicious and hostile toward each other. The medical crisis was the worst of all. The plague that had started in the outer colonies was spreading toward the galactic core. Dr. Yithare and her team on Zarian Prime were still struggling with the quantum biological interface that could stop the disease. "We have tried every approach in our databases," Dr. Yithara reported to the Galactic Health Council. "The interface remains unstable. We cannot create a working medical device." Council Chairman Valtar leaned forward on his forearms. "What? About the human research?" Dr. Park was making progress before she left. Dr. Yithara's purple skin darkened with embarrassment. "Her notes are incomplete. Her methods were too primitive to work with our advanced systems." But that was not entirely true. Helen Park's notes were complete and detailed. The problem was that her approach was so different from Xerion methods that the alien scientists could not understand how it could work. Helen had used simple mathematics and biological intuition instead of complex quantum calculations. She had looked at living systems and tried to copy what nature already did well. The Xerion scientists used pure logic and mathematical precision to force biological systems to behave the way they wanted. Perhaps we should try the human methods, suggested Dr. Githara quietly. Absolutely not, Dr. Githara replied. We are advanced scientists. We do not use primitive guesswork. But advanced science was not stopping the plague. The disease was now spreading through 12 star systems, and the death toll was rising every day. Millions of lives hung in the balance, while the Xerion scientists refused to consider that a simple human approach might work better than their complex theories. In the military sphere, the Void Wraith attacks were becoming more devastating. The energy beings had destroyed 3 more space stations and wiped out an entire colonial fleet. Their tactics seemed completely random, which made them impossible to counter. Admiral Zethkar had studied every recording of human military exercises he could find. The more he watched, the more he understood what Commander Thompson had been trying to teach them. Chaos is not random, he told his senior officers. Human chaos has patterns, but they are patterns based on intuition and creativity, not logic and calculation. That makes no sense, sir, Captain Vorthek protested. How can chaos have patterns? Watch this, Admiral Zethkar said, playing a recording of a human attack pattern. See how Thompson's ships seem to move randomly? But look closer. They are responding to what our ships do. They are not following a preset plan. They are making it up as they go along, based on what feels right in the moment. The Alteran officers stared at the screen in confusion. Their entire military doctrine was based on careful planning and logical execution. The idea of making up tactics during battle was terrifying to them. The Void Wraiths fight the same way, Admiral Zethkar continued. They do not follow battle plans. They respond to our moves with creativity and intuition. And because we can only think logically, we cannot predict what they will do next. So how do we fight them? Asked Captain Morphic. We need to learn to think like humans, Admiral Zethkar said. We need to become unpredictable ourselves. But learning to think like humans was harder than it sounded. The Alterans had spent centuries perfecting logical, mathematical approaches to warfare. Asking them to suddenly become creative and intuitive was like asking them to grow new limbs. Meanwhile, reports were coming in from human space that painted a very different picture. The humans were not just surviving without the Galactic Council, they were thriving. Their simple mining techniques were yielding incredible amounts of pure ore from asteroid fields that defeated advanced alien technology. Their chaotic military tactics had not only stopped Void Wraith attacks in human space, but had actually driven the energy beings back into the void. Most shocking of all, several species on the edge of Council space were quietly establishing trade relationships with Earth. The humans were offering fair deals, reliable partnerships, and the kind of cultural understanding that had become impossible to find in Council space. They are doing fine without us, Admiral Zethkar reported to the emergency council session. Better than fine. They are solving problems that we cannot solve. Impossible, Chairman Deltar replied. Human technology is primitive. Their methods are chaotic. They cannot be more successful than we are. But the evidence was overwhelming. The humans had left quietly, without anger or threats. They had simply decided they could do better on their own. And apparently, they were right. The galaxy was beginning to realize that the quiet, unremarkable humans had not been lucky or primitive. They had been different in ways that made them stronger, more adaptable, and more capable than anyone had imagined. And now they were gone, taking their strength with them. 3 years after the humans left quietly, Chairman Veltar called the most important meeting in Galactic Council history. The great chamber that had once buzzed with confident alien voices was now filled with worried whispers and desperate clicking. Sounds. The numbers were terrible. The Kepler Belt mining project had been abandoned after losing 30 billion credits. The Void Wraiths controlled a quarter of the galaxy and were advancing every day. The plague had reached the core worlds, killing millions. Trade had collapsed so badly that some planets were running out of food. Chairman Veltar stood on his 4 legs and looked around the chamber. Many seats were empty because their representatives had died in wraith attacks or plague outbreaks. The proud species that had dismissed human ideas 3 years ago now looked scared and desperate. "We must face the truth," Chairman Veltar began, his voice heavy with exhaustion. "Our evaluation of human capabilities was completely wrong." The chamber erupted in angry sounds. Crystalline representatives flashed defensive red colors. Zephyrian voices rang with denial. But underneath the noise, there was something new. Fear. "Wrong how?" demanded Ambassador Zertesh, though his crystal body had lost much of its bright shine. "Humans are primitive. Their technology is centuries behind ours." "Their technology worked," Admiral Zethkar replied from the military. Section. "Our advanced quantum extractors failed in the Kepler Belt. Human adaptive mining would have succeeded. Our logical battle tactics cannot defeat the Void Wraiths. Human chaos tactics drove them back." Dr. Ythara stood slowly, her purple skin pale with shame. The quantum biological interface that could stop the plague, the human Dr. Park was 3 months from completing it when she left. "We have spent 3 years trying to finish her work and have made no progress." "Because you refused to use her methods," Dr. Kithara added quietly. Her simple approach was working. "Our complex theories are not." The truth was spreading through the chamber, like the plague spreading through the galaxy. The humans had not been lucky or primitive. They had been right in ways the Council had refused to see. Intelligence. Director Kelenov activated a holographic display showing human space. "Our scouts report that human territory is not just surviving, it is expanding. They have established trade relationships with 47 species, including 16 that were former Council members." The hologram showed busy human trade stations, thriving colonies, and peaceful borders. While Council space burned with war and disease, human space was growing stronger every day. "How?" whispered someone from the back of the chamber. "They solve problems instead of creating them," Admiral Zethkar said bitterly. When the Void Wraiths attacked human space, the humans did not form committees to study the problem. They sent Captain Rodriguez and his Chaos Fighters to drive them back. It took them 6 months to clear their territory completely. The mining. Operations in human space are producing 3 times what our failed Kepler project was supposed to yield, added Economics Director Zeltos. They use simple, flexible methods that adapt to changing conditions instead of rigid systems that break when anything unexpected happens. And their medical research has not only stopped the plague in their territory, they are developing treatments for diseases that have plagued the galaxy for centuries, Dr. Ythara admitted. Dr. Park's approach was not primitive. It was revolutionary. The silence that followed was heavier than the chamber's artificial gravity. 3 years ago, these same aliens had laughed at human proposals. They had dismissed human science as crude guesswork. They had mocked human tactics as chaotic nonsense. Not now. Their advanced science was failing while human simplicity succeeded. Their logical tactics were useless while human chaos won battles. Their rigid systems were breaking while human flexibility thrived. "We were fools," Chairman Veltar said quietly. "We measured their worth by our standards and found them wanting. But our standards were wrong." Ambassador Zertesh's crystal form flickered with confused colors. But their ships were smaller. Their computers were slower. Their methods looked so primitive. Primitive means simple, not wrong, Dr. Kithara explained. They built simple things that worked, instead of complex things that impressed people. They valued results over appearances. Director Kelenoff activated another display. Human space now includes systems that used to belong to council members. The Rigel colonies requested human protection after we failed to stop Wraith attacks. In their sector, the Vega trading posts switched to human mediation after council translators could not resolve basic communication problems. The images showed former council worlds flying human flags and hosting human ships. Species that had been loyal council. Members for generations were quietly switching sides, choosing human competence over council prestige. They are stealing our members, someone complained. They are not stealing anyone, Admiral Zethkar corrected. Species are choosing them because they provide better protection, better trade deals, and better solutions to real problems. Most painful truth was still coming. Intelligence reports showed that human space was not just independent, it was superior. Their simple technologies were more reliable than council equipment. Their flexible tactics were more effective than council strategies. Their practical science was more successful than council theories. What do we do now? Asked Dr. Yathara. How do we fix this? We ask them to come back, Chairman Veltar said simply. The chamber exploded in shocked sounds. The idea of the mighty. Galactic Council asking anyone to return was unthinkable. Council members were supposed to beg for admission, not be begged to return. We cannot, protested Ambassador Zertesh. We are the Galactic Council. We do not beg primitives to help us. They are not primitives, Admiral Zethkar said firmly. We were primitives. We were too primitive to recognize superior methods when we saw them. Chairman Veltar activated his personal communicator and sent a message toward human space. It was a simple request for Ambassador Morrison to return for negotiations about human membership in the Council. The response came back within hours. It was even simpler than the request. Thank you for the invitation, Morrison's recorded voice said. However, humanity must respectfully decline. We have found that we can serve galactic peace and prosperity more effectively through our current arrangements. We wish the Council success in resolving its current challenges. The message was polite but final. The humans were not interested in returning to a council that had spent 3 years proving it did not value their contributions. They said no, Chairman Veltar announced unnecessarily. Of course they said no, Dr. Kithara replied. Why would they want to come back to be insulted and ignored again? Over the following months, more bad news arrived daily. The Void Wraiths captured another sector. The plague reached Zerion Prime itself. 3 more council species formally withdrew and requested human protection. Reports from human space showed the opposite trend. They had signed mutual defense treaties with 24 species. Their trade network was growing rapidly. Their medical teams were offering free treatment to plague victims in neutral space. The humans were becoming the power they had always been capable of being, while the council that had rejected them fell apart. We had our chance, Chairman Veltar said during what would be the last full council session. 3 years ago, Ambassador Morrison offered us partnership with a remarkable species. We chose mockery instead of cooperation. It is not too late, someone suggested weakly. We could offer them a better deal. What could we offer them? Admiral Zethkar asked. They have everything they need. We are the ones who are desperate. The truth was bitter but undeniable. The humans had left quietly, without anger or threats. They had taken their intelligence, their adaptability, and their problem-solving skills to build something better than what the Council offered. They had not needed the Council to become successful. But the council, it turned out, had needed them desperately. 3 years too late? The galaxy learned that respect must be earned through actions, not demanded through tradition. The quiet species that had been dismissed as unremarkable had proven themselves to be extraordinary in most important ways. And now they were gone forever, leaving behind a council that finally understood what it had lost when those quiet footsteps faded away